Joining us next to talk about how you can preserve business outcomes by protecting your organization's infrastructure is Tom DeCoster. He's the Vice President of Managed Services with CDW, and he is an amazing playlist maker. So we have a sales management call every week. He goes and puts a Spotify list together. So he definitely has something. If you catch him on lunch or something, you might want to ask him about that. He is going to be joined by Jeremiah Salzberg. He's the Chief Security Technologist from Sirius, which is a CDW company. So welcome, Tom and Jeremiah.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I didn't quite hear that. All right, much better. Jeremiah, it's great to see you.
Thank you. In person even. It's amazing.
It's great to see you. Hey, let's go ahead and get grounded on the discussion. I mean, we've got a bunch of stuff to catch up on. So I'm just going to ground us on just the outcomes story that we've been talking about. You know, what we're seeing here is just the CDW Customer Outcomes Framework, innovation, cost, agility, risk, experience. And, you know, as you know, Jeremiah, we typically start the customer conversation with this outcomes framework because ultimately, you know, customers are looking to achieve one of those 5 outcomes through the use of technology. But, you know, in my conversations with you, you guys have helped me kind of wrap my brain around this. The punchline ultimately is that all of these outcomes are underpinned by effective cybersecurity. And then ultimately, if you have effective cybersecurity, it enables those outcomes. So I know you've been doing a bunch of traveling, meeting with a bunch of customers, including like even a few minutes ago.
Absolutely, just got off a call.
And so, you know, in this context of outcomes, Jeremiah, what's kind of top of mind for customers in terms of security concerns, right?
Well, obviously risk, as we put that up there, that's probably top of mind. But what I'm trying to get people to understand is security is also very heavily focused on innovation, right? Helping companies innovate through security. And so I think if you're talking to your board, you're talking to your company, you want to help them innovate faster. And security really underpins a lot of that innovation. You know, how can I securely do something I may not have been able to do before? And so I think innovation is a huge one for me. And the one I think it's probably best to focus on when you're talking about security rather than just risk. We talk about risk every day. It's something that obviously we're trying to reduce risk with security, but innovation is, I think, where we can actually start to be that, instead of the CISO of no, to the CISO that's really making a difference for the company.
By the way, we're all friends here, so you can, you know.
I could sit down. I'd rather pace. I'm more of a talking and pacing type of person.
So let me ask you just a question I know that is on everybody's mind. And Tom Gillis was just up here, and he talked about the importance of ransomware. And you know, as you know, it's getting more sophisticated. It's getting more expensive. I mean, it's financially meaningful right now. And when I talk to customers, you know, they're concerned about ransomware on their supply chain. They're concerned about ransomware as a result of phishing or, you know, unpatched systems. And, you know, I'm even hearing customers talk about now, like this sophisticated business about ransomware as a service. So, you know, in your estimation, where is ransomware going right now? And for the customers out there, I mean, what are some of the practical things that they should be doing to mitigate that risk?
Right, and I don't talk about it as ransomware, I talk about it as organized cybercrime. It's a much better kind of approach to this. They're financially motivated, they're getting better and better. Some of the reasons that those ransoms are going up is that they're getting better at making sure we don't have the ability to recover. They're going up after our backup systems. They're getting to be fully owning the entire network instead of the old ransomware, and including ransomware as a service and everything, of land and just start encrypting. Now they're really looking at taking over the entire network. And it's a lot more like a pen tester. It's a lot more like, almost like a nation state. They have a lot of the same resources. If you were at the security breakfast earlier, you heard some of this, but you know, they've hired project managers, they've hired developers. They're writing their own custom code to get in and attack us. And I think that we're going to see more of that custom coding capability attacking us again and again. And the custom code is both to establish a connection out to the world, that command and control channel, also to evade our security controls, right? They know what we have on our systems. Social engineering, that sort of ability to go talk to somebody and get all the information out of them, or what we call open source intelligence gathering, OSINT, they go out and they find all this information. I was talking about one of my favorite places to do this when I'm doing a pen test is LinkedIn. I go in, I looked at all the job postings and who's working there and what their skills are and what they have in their bios. Hey, I run CrowdStrike for this company and I'm the administrator. It's like I have all the information I need right there. And our attackers are doing that exact same thing. And they're getting better at it, and they're hiring people with perfect English skills. They're hiring people to do the data analysis on top of all of this. And so we're starting to see cascading attacks too, and that's something we're going to see more and more of, where they attack one company, and then they start going after other ones with their data. It's something we've seen in the banking industry for quite a while. I was a CISO at a bank, and we had a lot of attacks against that bank that were really attacking our escrow companies and not attacking us specifically. And so they would go for them, and then they'd take over their email and start attacking us with standard business email compromise, but using existing emails against us. Well, you talk about supply chain, you're part of that supply chain for other companies. And if you get compromised, they're oftentimes taking your data and saying, okay, they have contracts with this company. They've been working with them. This is the sort of data. And so we're seeing more of those advanced attacks, and we're going to see more and more of that.
So when we see reference made to kind of second-party, third-party extortion, that's what that references is. People that are also in your partnership and supply chain.
Yep, absolutely. And sometimes they're going to find enough information in your data on some other company to maybe ask for a ransom from them too. And so that second, third party is because they have data analysts, right? They're going through your data to find out what's valuable, how valuable it is to you, how valuable it is to attack other people as well. So it's really interesting to see that methodology.
So what do you recommend? I mean, as a customer, what should I be doing right now with all this risk out there?
Well, there's a ton of it. Obviously, the first thing I recommend is ransomware-proof backups. Whatever you can do to make sure your backup systems, your ability to recover is beyond attack. Any way you can possibly do that, there's a lot of different methodologies. But at the same time, on just beyond ability to attack, you need to be able to respond quickly and recover quickly. Right, and so those backup systems, if they're all cloud-based, which is great, it's a great way to make sure your data is ransomware-proof. But the time it takes to get the data back and recovered can sometimes be longer. And so there's different methodologies for that. We've been helping a lot of companies with this, actually get towards that capability of being able to recover quickly and have all of their data truly protected. Because we've gone in and helped some companies that did not have that. We saw a company where they had been sitting in there for 3 months just deleting backups, actually just making the backups useless, really. And so they're just sitting there. And so when they were finally discovered, they suddenly started encrypting everything. They realized that they'd been discovered, that they were starting to have an incident response firm come in, and they started encrypting everything immediately. And then they went, oh, well, we've got these great backups. They were all gone. And that's the sort of advanced attack where they're sitting there quiet in our environments. And so I really believe ransomware-proof protection is incredibly important, but I still also believe in prevent and detect. I think we can prevent a lot of these attacks. A lot of them change the behaviors of systems. So those systems suddenly, to start doing a lot of things they never did before. One of the things I do when I go on a system, I start hitting every single file system to see what sort of data is in there. Now, that's very different usage patterns than that person on that system or that application on that system ever did before. And so if we start looking for behavioral changes from how a system usually operates and now operates differently, that's a fantastic methodology for detection, because while I still want to prevent everything, I still am focused on that. Detection and quick detection is the next big step, so that you can make sure that they're not resident in your systems for months. You can take that down to minutes, hopefully, to detect and start your remediation efforts.
That's interesting. Mariette, we're going to take an intermission. I believe you might have a question, or someone else might have a question.
Well, I would love to know what are some of the more sophisticated attacks we're seeing these days.
Yeah, it's really, I think that custom development is what we're talking about. So we saw, well, it started with a great social engineering, and I say great, I just saying I admire their trade calf. So we saw one where they saw somebody online had posted on their LinkedIn that they got a graduate degree at some place, and then they sent that person a phishing message saying, here, download your graduate degree, right? So that was the first of a really just well-done attack. So it was perfectly written, it looked like it came from their university, they had that diploma that they were, digital diploma to download that had their name on it and their university, it looked amazing. And so they opened it up, and it started that initial command and control. It was a brand new command and control, never been seen before. They knew exactly what endpoint protector was on there, and they had written a custom disabling tool for it, and then they started moving from there. From there, it's really very traditional tradecraft. This stuff has not changed in so many years. It's the exact same stuff we do as pen testers to get in your network. We expand, we try and find a different system, we try and find different accounts, we go through your file systems. I mean, all of these basic things are all exactly the same. And so it's really about getting that first connection, being quiet. We see a lot of native tool usage. We've been talking about it for a long time. We're starting to see them not use PowerShell anymore. PowerShell used to be the #1 tool to use on a system once we got in, but a lot of the EDR systems are getting a lot better at detecting that now. So there's some pivoting to other types of tools to use, writing their own command line scripts and things that are just maybe not as powerful as we could do with PowerShell, but definitely still functional. So we're starting to see that ability to be super quiet, but otherwise it's still very similar to what we've seen before. So having good pen tests, having people come in and test your systems just like an attacker. And one of the things I mentioned in that breakfast was unconstrained. Don't put boxes around your pen testers. Let them come in like any attacker would, and you'll get to see more of how you'd be able to respond to this level of attack.
That's fascinating. Do you see any trending in terms of origin, changes in origin in terms of this type of sophisticated hacking that you're talking about?
I mean, I'm going to say the word Russia, right? We still see a lot coming from Russia. We thought we might see some coordination between these ransomware groups that are being sheltered by the Russian government. There's a lot of groups that are very sophisticated because they don't have a lot of issues with hiding their money, right? They're driving around in Ferraris and whatever else, and the government loves them, right? They take money from the United States, they bring it to Russia. It's basically, that's Russia's goal. Like weaken the U.S., disrupt the U.S., and take money out. So they love these groups, so they support them. Oftentimes there's a lot of interrelation between actual government groups and them. But we thought we'd see more of a coordinated attack from them with everything that's going on in Ukraine. But we did not. I think they just have become very focused on money. They think of it as a business. They don't really care about getting involved in the politics of this. So we thought we might see them get activated and start doing as many attacks as they could. They're still doing attacks, but just not quite the level we've seen before. We see a lot of very well-executed attacks coming out of Romania. And that's really nothing new. The Romanian attack groups are the same groups that have been attacking banking and financial for decades. There's a whole city that is basically dedicated to financial crime. And when I was dealing with the Romanian authorities, they're like, yeah, we won't go into that city. That's a no-go zone for us. If the money ends there, that's where we're going to let it be. So it's getting pretty dangerous when you have those environments for people to operate in. We still see Nigerians and others out there, but they're just not quite the same level of skill set that we've seen from other areas.
I think I could listen to you for hours and hours. Let's just change the perspective here a moment and just talk about security on public cloud. So a couple months ago, Gartner puts out this study and says, hey, the total enterprise spend on public cloud is going to be equivalent to the total spend on traditional IT by 2025. And so if you think about the implication of that, let's just take stock. You've got an increasingly, hybrid cloud environment. You have this explosion of structured and unstructured data. You've got your environment distributed everywhere. You've just effectively just erased the sense of network perimeter. You've got distributed data, distributed apps, distributed devices, distributed people, distributed infrastructure. So just, when you think about top considerations for public cloud security, how do you think about that? And then again, for the audience, what are some of the practical things that they should be doing to secure their public cloud environment?
You bet. Well, public cloud means a lot of different things. There's infrastructure, there's platform, there's software as a service. There's a lot of different areas. The one thing they all have in common is configuration, right? And infrastructure as a service, I'm going to put all my data center and servers and workloads up there. We have all the exact same security concerns we have in a normal data center. But on top of those exact same concerns, with maybe some challenges because it's cloud environments and we don't own it, are configuration issues, right? And so these are where we've seen all of the major cloud breaches come from. Misconfigured S3 buckets, access to elastic backends and databases that we shouldn't have access to. All these different things that we see out there are all due to configurations. And the biggest problem with that I see is we go in and do configuration audits of them. We go help them make sure that configuration is set up correctly, that it's working as it should, that it has no major security vulnerabilities. But it's so easy to change that, right? And so you really need to start looking at continuous monitoring of configuration of your cloud environments. And that goes across all of them. So whether it's your infrastructure, platform, absolutely, but even that software as a service. So you should be looking at, your Salesforce configs and everything to make sure that you're not, you don't have somebody who shouldn't have access to it, or you're not allowing access to certain areas to other people you shouldn't. There's a lot of that same scope creep that you might have in your normal infrastructure that you'll have also in those software as a service. So that's really major. Plus, as we start moving towards more ephemeral systems, containers and things, it's not the system that we're auditing, it's the configuration again. And so looking at configuration across everything is absolutely key to securing any of your cloud environments. And it's something that I see a lot of companies not doing well, or they do it on a point-by-point basis. And so it was great, 3 months ago, but in that 3 months, it's drifted to be insecure.
So the other part to that is, to secure to what extent? So if I have an application that's running in an AWS environment, may I assume that application is also secure?
Only if you secured it. So when I say you have to do the exact same security things you would do in your own data center, it means you have to have your own, web application firewall. You have to have your own, configuration control. You need to have everything you would have internally. You also need to have an AWS. Now, there's a level of trust that you have with them. But that level of trust for that infrastructure component is just at the hypervisor level. You trust them to give you secure compute, right? And you're trusting that they're going to do that well. But you can't trust them to do anything else. Everything else on top of that it's just a server on the wind. It's out in the internet. And if you're not doing anything with it, you're fooling yourself. I have a lot of people that believe it's Amazon's job, or it's Microsoft's job, or it's Google's job to secure my systems in their environment, and it's not. They give you a lot of capabilities that maybe they give you for free. So they'll give you a free firewall you can use, they'll give you a free, other things. They give you all of these types of tools, but unless you configure them, they don't do anything for you. But they're also maybe not the best, right? So they give you a firewall and a load balancer. There may be better ones out there. And so you still, even if it's free, even if it's in there, you need to evaluate, is that what is appropriate for my business? Is it secure enough? Is it going to do exactly what I need it to do? So you have to evaluate the free solutions that they give you on top of everything else.
This idea of resilience and the notion that it's not if but when.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that mindset, as our customers think about their own infrastructure?
Yeah, and I try not to think about the if but when. I always believe I could, if I had, the perfect environment where I could spend a reasonable amount, not unlimited budget, that I could make that when maybe not happen. But it's hard to do that, especially in complex, larger environments. It can be a real challenge to get to that sort of level where you know it might happen, but it might only get a little ways in your environment. Again, back to that detection. So I think the more we can start to identify how to start restricting that, the better. Now, I talked about backups, having the ability to recover. That's 100% key, but practicing, right? Practicing for when this could occur. These are incident response tabletops. These are making sure you have incident response playbooks. It's the sort of thing where, if you have this happening, and I've been an incident responder, I've gone into companies where, I come in and they're having a really bad day. Everyone's running around screaming, like, I don't know what to do, and this it's crazy, it's hectic, it's insane. I have to come in there, calm the room down, send some people to boil water. I got to do a number of different things to kind of just control that room. And having an incident response playbook that you've tested and validated, having gone through this as a group before in tabletop exercises, helps you not be that crazy group of people that are running around not knowing what to do. It's still going to happen. Trust me, even with a good incident response playlist, with a tabletop, there will be people who do things they should not in an incident, even though they know they shouldn't, or it was at least part of that tabletop. And one of the biggest things I see is that call to law enforcement. So I see a lot of times somebody's like, oh, we're having a big incident, I'm calling the FBI. That's the wrong move, right? The FBI can be a useful resource, but you have to understand they have different motivations and goals than you as a company have. And you have to understand how those mesh. They can be useful, they can be helpful, but their whole goal is getting that criminal, which in a lot of these cases is impossible. Like that line ends at Russia, they're done, right? Yeah, we know who it is, it's Bob, he's got a Ferrari, there he is. We can't do anything about it. So there's points where they can't really even help you. And so I'm always telling companies, you need to make sure you have that RACI chart, right? This is something that is such a simple concept, but I find missing. So who's responsible, who's accountable, whatever the INC mean, the consulted, the involved. You need to make sure you know who's allowed to do these things in an incident. Normally, I say it should be legal counsel and your executive team that make that decision to bring the FBI in. Just because it's a big decision and you need to really think about it appropriately. So having tested that and run through it and knowing who's responsible for what makes an incident not better, but at least more organized, and you can oftentimes respond quicker and know exactly what to do. Having all those phone numbers of who to call, if you have a third-party incident company you're working with, who do I call, who's allowed to call them, all these things written down and tested, making sure you have backups for everyone who are responsible. That's the sort of thing where you're having an incident, and it may not be that bad. The other thing I love to do is make incidents. Obviously, as a former pen tester, I love to make incidents. But sometimes having your incident response team come in unannounced and create incidents, right? Maybe you take that incident and you run it through your entire incident response playbook before anyone else knows that it's actually, good actors. It's a good way to test it out, but there's some dangers there, so you may want to put some boxes around that one. Just because that one person who might go call the FBI might go call the FBI in a sample one. So having some control around it might be useful.
Let's just turn over to M&A right now, because last year, record year for M&A globally. We had over $5 trillion of M&A volume in 2021. 2022 might be a little bit muted for M&A just because of rising interest rates, but it's still historically really, really high. So as you think about the major parts on the M&A process, you think about due diligence, and then you think about the transaction, and then you think about the integration, something that we're all going through right now. What are the major security considerations there? And again, I'm in talking with any number of customers, they were either acquirers or acquired. What are the best practices there?
Yeah, and obviously best practice is fully audit your company you're looking to acquire for security. Like, you may find that their security risk is this high and you're willing to accept this high. And so understanding that much extra security risk means dollars, right? That's just a financial decision at that point. Like, they're too messed up from security for us to buy. I've seen that happen. I've also seen companies not do that analysis and just buy the company and then realize how bad off they were. Oh, they actually have active incidents going on right now. They're completely owned. Is that a company you want to be buying? And so understanding where they're at before that decision to put ink on paper is vital. But I also love the capabilities we have now today, which we didn't really have before, to kind of keep an acquired company at arm's length for a long time. You can start to integrate system by system individually. You don't have to connect networks, connect forests. You don't have to do any of these things. You can start to give them access to individual applications through things like zero trust network access, single sign-on gateways. There's a lot of capabilities to give access individually and to say that group is going to have access to this thing, but only that thing. And so you start them off in that sort of hands-off, arm's length approach, and then as you integrate them in, you can give them more and more access. And so I love that methodology. It kind of bleeds into the zero trust approach, right? We're going to give you access to only exactly what you need. And it may be a great point to even start that journey towards a zero trust philosophy and how you're designing your connections to systems. And so that is something to think about when you're doing that. It's like, maybe we want to just have them be in that least privileged box going forward. I think it's not a bad design.
Is it a good assumption, Jeremiah, to think that the bigger company with perhaps a larger IT group has more effective cybersecurity?
No, not at all. I always like to tell people, and I did a lot of pen testing on banks, so I'm not picking on banks out there, but the larger the bank, the easier it is to break in. Like, and don't change any money based on that, but the idea is a lot of larger companies have a harder time controlling all their assets. And maybe they've done a few acquisitions before without really merging systems or creating, any sort of protections between them. And so we see a lot of those very large companies out there unable to understand what they have, how they got it, what it's connected to, a lot of things that, are kind of basic and fundamental. And so oftentimes these smaller companies are coming in saying, maybe it's a cloud native company, right? A company that started up in the cloud age and didn't have any infrastructure. Sometimes those are the most secure companies. They have systems that only have access to exactly what they need. They have all their security in other systems and cloud environments, and they actually have kind of built up right. I went and audited a small financial services firm that was kind of leading the way in a few different areas, and they're being acquired. And when I got there, and I'm talking to them like, "Wow, this is great! Like, what you're doing is really very good." Like, they had everything. Everything was well organized, perfect change control. They had all the, just about everything you might expect to have in a security program. But it was all automated. It was all, in a different environment. I mean, the only thing I can say is they didn't do a lot of control in their endpoints because all they cared about was the data, and they controlled the data. And so the endpoints were Wild West, but the data was well controlled.
I'm going to turn it over to the audience for some questions here in a minute, but just a little backstory, everybody. 30 seconds before we walked up on stage was the first time that I met Jeremiah in person.
Yes.
So Well done. Really do appreciate the
Not
the
late at
discussion.
all. That's right. Yes, I had a customer call right up to 9:30, and I'm like, I got a half hour.
You're good. You're
yes.
good. Appreciate the time.